Hello everybody, Carl here. Yes, I am back here to do my review of X-Men First Class. Now I apologise, this is a week late. I actually saw it last Wednesday, so it's more than a week late for me. And this is due to A, me being the worst procrastinator this side of LazyTown, and B, I was really debating whether I was going to do this out of order, whether I was going to do it as part of my History of X-Men and Other Media series. But after mulling it over, I'd really think you guys want my thoughts on it right now, as opposed to much later down the line whenever I finally get around to doing the Wolverine review. So this will not be part of the History of X-Men or the media. Maybe I'll put it in it after I've completed the Wolverine, and then it could be an entire series. So without further ado, let's get on to it, and let me just start by saying I absolutely loved this movie. This was the sleeper hit of the summer. I was not expecting anything at the turn of the year, when we didn't have a trailer out yet, when we didn't really have any images, when we didn't hear anything. When I saw the Z-list X-Men team they were using, I was really down on this film. Then that first trailer came out, and you saw my thoughts on that on the trailer. It really made me do a 180, and really couldn't wait to see this film. And by the time it came out, and all the positive reviews right on top of that, I was really excited going in, and I had a huge smile on my face coming out of it. First and foremost, as a huge X-Men fan, I was able to get over the fact that this was not in the comic timeline, because the movies have really done their own timeline and stuff like that anyway, and nobody's complaining that this wasn't the actual First Class. They really need to realise that they couldn't do that. You can tell by sort of the soft reboot elements of this, of how far to set it back, the look, the feel of it, the feeling that Vaughn really did want to do a full-on reboot, but he couldn't get permission, so this prequel series was his choice to go with. And what started out as a film that was made just so that Fox could keep the rights, which a lot of us were angry at because we wanted it to revert to Marvel, and secondly, just to get it out on the assembly line, really don't care about this is just a cash-in movie, became one of the best in the series. This is due to several things. Bryan Singer coming back on as producer, due to Matthew Vaughn directing, his directive vision, and just the absolute quality of the film here. It is a well-told story, a well-told film, a well-told character piece, but it also succeeds in pleasing the fanboys by doing some of the comic characters so well that it literally half the time feels like the comic characters have come to life. This is added to with the looks and the aesthetics of the films. The uniforms are far more like the comic version. And that's to say nothing for Magneto, which had me absolutely geeking out at the end of the film like I really haven't since The Dark Knight. First and foremost, this film is about Xavier and Magneto, and you can certainly see by the character arc, the big character arc in the film, is that this is definitely a reworking of Magneto Origins. It's really his story, with Xavier as a close second. And for that reason, the fact that some of the characters are weaker members of the X-Men cast, doesn't really matter, because they are just there to be stand-ins for any X-Men team. But what they actually do with some of their supporting cast to make sure that they aren't coming off that wooden, like in films like Wolverine, they actually flesh out the characters, give them arcs, give them character, give them personality. So even this team that is just there just to be the X-Men actually are fleshed out and are very likeable. In fact, I came out of this film feeling so good about characters like Banshee and Havoc, who I only really had a passing interest in, how well they were done on this film, how well their powers were shown, how good their characters were done, that I was actually annoyed that we're not going to see, at least for until the next film, Vaughn get to do this with any A-lister X-Men. The only real A-list character that I was hugely into, obviously, was Magneto, and then a second with Xavier. And what he did with those is so good that it just made me think, man, if he did Banshee this well, imagine how well he'd do with Cyclops. It's funny, actually. Wolverine Origins had three huge A-listers, three of the most popular mutants of all time in Wolverine, Gambit, and Deadpool, and really, apart from Wolverine, the others two were screwed because they were in the wrong movie, and it got it all wrong. Wolverine Origins had all the elements, and missed. X-Men First Class had none of the elements, and hit big time. That's why this film is so good. Let's get on to the cast. James McAvoy is absolutely superb as Charles Xavier. I didn't realise he was Irish for the entire film. His accent never slipped. He was a great Charles Xavier. And really, not only did it seem that this guy could turn into Patrick Stewart's, but I think he was far more like Xavier from the comics than Patrick Stewart's was. You know, he did things like research the comics to putting the two fingers up to his head, which is something Patrick Stewart never did. And that is just fantastic work of an actor, and I at the start was really liking him as just a fun, likable guy who's using his speech from the first film's opening to hit on girls and things like that. Is just brilliant filmmaking and extremely well acted by McAvoy. What I particularly loved was his chemistry with, obviously, Eric Lenscher, Magneto, which we'll get into a second, but also his chemistry with the others, how great they showed off his abilities as a teacher. He had him going with all of them, working, using their powers, showing him being what he's meant to be, a teacher of helping them use their powers. In all the other films, he's already taught them, and all the characters either don't get any scenes getting taught with him, or have already mastered their powers, so you don't get Xavier as Professor Xavier. In this film, you do, and that is just so good to see how well he works with the cast. Michael Fassbender steals the show as Magneto. And that's not just because Magneto is one of my favourite mutants ever and one of my favourite comic characters, hell, one of my favourite characters of all time. But seriously, he does a awesome job of Magneto. He is a badass. He just absolutely overshadows McKellen, added to the fact that he gets to wear the comic version of Magneto's helmet. In fact, the background of that helmet, at this point I'll say spoiler warning because I'm going to go into spoilers here, the background of the helmet from Shaw, and the fact when he puts it on, it's him turning against Xavier, and it's him taking Shaw's mantle and after he's killed him and things like that. Just symbolism behind a thing that didn't need symbolism, but it adds that much more to his character. The Nazi hunter stuff, the relationship with Xavier is so well done. Everything about him was just Magneto from the comics on screen, and the costume being so close to the comic costume just added to that so much more. This was Magneto of the comics come to life, and this guy did an amazing job at it. That was added to, in fact, by the special effects. The scenes at the end where he was lifting submarines and turning missiles back and things like that, his acting plus the special effects just really made Magneto the badass. And his chemistry and mystique and the things he was saying to people at the end, you really could support Magneto as an anti-hero as opposed to a villain. Some people might even be swayed to go with Magneto because he had good reasons for what he does, and that's what makes a great villain. My only real complaint about Michael Fassbender is in the final few minutes and about the last 20 minutes when he actually becomes Magneto, his accent slips, and on the beach he's literally just talking in his own Irish accent, which is a bit weird. But Ian McKellen's also Irish, I think, so that actually works. Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw is in no way the Sebastian Shaw from the comics. He hasn't even got the sideburns or long hair. Maybe he's a young Sebastian Shaw. And he does have his power, which they use extremely well in the film. He's a very good, charismatic villain that's enjoyable to watch, but in no way he's the Sebastian Shaw of the comics. But Sebastian Shaw of the comics is a kind of changing hit-and-miss character anyway, so that's fine. He's a great, charismatic villain that just happens to have the power and the name of a comic book counterpart. Rose Byrne as Moira McTaggart is Moira McTaggart only really in name. It's a completely different character, despite what happened in X3, but we'll get into that into a second, and my thoughts on that. She's not Scottish at all, which is annoying because I found out that the actress is actually British, and she probably could have done a good Scottish accent. She did a really good American accent in this. I liked her in it, but maybe the CIA thing, it worked for the film, it really did, but it's a shame that Moira McTaggart from the comics couldn't be here. Maybe she could have a daughter called Moira, have her move to Scotland, and then she can have a Scottish accent. She can be Moira Jr., who's actually Scottish. Maybe that'll work. Jennifer Lawrence is absolutely awesome as Mystique. She really is. She gets some great scenes. She's got some great stuff with Beast, some great stuff with Magneto. You really get to see her arc of how she starts, how the world treats her, how even Xavier treats her when in blue form, and then she sees Magneto and he accepts her for what she is, and she just absolutely, you can see why she goes with him. She's just absolutely extremely well done in this film. And also the cameo when she turned into Rebecca Romijn. Great stuff. Nicholas Hoult actually makes a really good Beast. I really liked him as Hank McCoy. He was really likable. He was really enjoyable. You really felt the sympathy of what he was trying to do. And then when he turned into Cat Beast, he kind of got over that really quick. Cat Beast itself didn't look that good, but I'm not a fan of Cat Beast in general. But, it looked fine for what it was. It was him becoming Beast, and the transformation scene was good, and his character arc and his reasons. And in fact, the reason he turns blue is because he used Mystique's DNA, and that's why he has blue skin and yellow eyes, actually really works. Again, one of those things that is not in the comics, but really makes sense, and he's really creative on the side of the filmmakers. Lucas Till is absolutely great as Alex Summers. I love him. They have this kind of antisocial aspect to him, which I'm not sure is really part of the character, but they do a good job with Alex Summers and his power and stuff like that. He's more there to be a power, but he does get a couple of good character moments. Caleb Jones as Sean Cassidy Banshee. Oh my god, this was good. He was trying to do an Irish accent, it seemed, or maybe that's just his voice. It sounds kind of weird, so I thought maybe they were trying to get him to do an Irish accent. But considering if this is his actual voice, then I guess it's, not in the best interest. So it was fine. But the best part by far was seeing him fly, and he was in the wings and that from the comics and stuff like that. And the flying looked really good. That's one thing I'll say about this film. The action was so much better than probably any of the films. The flying looked fantastic. It didn't look like wire work like an X3, and the look of just everything was so good. The only real featured mutant I had a problem with was January Jones as Emma Frost. Again, I can't hold it against her that she wasn't doing a British accent, but I think she should have, really. I think they should have chosen an actress that did a British accent, because they did pretty much everything else right. She was Emma Frost from the comics. She gave a bit of a wooden delivery, but maybe that's what they need for this version of the Emma Frost character. If they did an Emma Frost that got with Cyclops later on, I think they need an actress who could do a better job. And she didn't really seem like the mean, bitchy Emma. She was more just kind of the henchman girl, which was kind of a shame. As far as the Darwin that I was moaning about, I didn't need to worry. He gets killed off early. Again, spoiler warnings, but really, the whole thing with this is all the mutants that don't matter are either just goons or they disappear pretty quick, and any of the ones that are actual proper X-Men that anybody could care about, like Banshee and Havoc, stay around and they get more stuff, so that's fine. Really, the only bad thing I can say about this film was I walked out of it wishing it was an actual reboot. I walked out of it saying, damn, if that's how good he did with this, imagine how good a real X-Men film would be in Vaughn's hands. Imagine how good X3 would have been if this guy had directed. Imagine how good this film was absolutely fantastic, but imagine how much better it would have been if he had been allowed to use the actual First Class from the comics with Cyclops, Jean Grey, Angel, Iceman, those characters. How well he did with characters like Banshee shows how awesome he would have done with A-listers who have real good backstory and characters to tell. It just makes you wish this was a full-on reboot because he did it so well. The look is fantastic, the acting is fantastic, the characters are great, only a few minor problems. I walked out with a smile on my face. This is, to me, one of the best films of the franchise and the best comic film since The Dark Knight. Or at least the one I enjoyed the most since The Dark Knight. X-Men and Batman are my things, so yeah, for me, I'll go on record and say that. And for a sleeper film which was rushed out just to get the name X-Men out there so folks didn't lose the rights, this turned out to be far better than any of the supposed cash cows of the past couple. The two misses of Wolverine and X3 are completely redeemed by this film, and a new franchise begins that has so much possibilities with this era setting, has so much possibilities for what it could do with characters that were wronged in the other films. And as I say, my only problem is that this wasn't a full-on reboot, and from now, this would be the X-Men franchise. Matthew Vaughn, I want you to be the new godfather of the X-Men, because this was great. Absolutely, I'd say 4.5 stars, almost 5 stars for me. Absolutely brilliant. As far as what I see for the next film, what I'd like to see, but I don't know whether this is what they do, is I'd say set it in the 80s, like 20 years later, have them recruit Cyclops, Jean Grey and Storm as the second class, and have a sort of 80s, almost Watchmen-esque period film where they're dressed in the 80s version of the costumes. Maybe you could have Mohawk Storm and Skullcap Cyclops and things like that. I think that would be a great next step for me. And maybe we'll get that, because it seems like we might actually be getting a trilogy out of this, and I'm fine with that. If this is where the X-Men franchise is going to go, thank you. Fox's X-Men franchise has been redeemed. I don't mind that it's not going back to Marvel after this. So, what did you all think of the film? Put your thoughts down below in the comments section. Like, dislike, whatever you like. And I'll be back as soon as possible with more reviews, I promise. I'll get around to them. I'll get Batman and Robin and Wolverine done very soon. So, thank you everybody. I am Carl, Side the Ring Productions. See you all later.